welcome to the open seminar part of the Future of Europe Youth Convention. My name is Silja Markkula, and I am the president of the International Committee of Alliansi. And we also are very pleased to have some important guests here. We have the Vice President of the European Commission, Jyrki Katainen, here, as well as members of Parliament, of the European Parliament, Henna, Virkkunen and Miapetra Kumpula-Natri, as well as Kristen Aigro from the European Youth Forum, our umbrella organization at the European level, and Tuomas Tikkanen, who is the president of JEF Finland. And most importantly, we also have young people from both Baltics and the Nordics present here in the room. And we have online guests who are watching us in the stream. So hello everyone who is online at the moment. So yesterday and today, we've had 3 different working groups of young people from different parts of Northern Europe discussing what they feel about the future of Europe. We have had one working group discussing the different scenarios that Juncker and the Commission presented on the future of Europe. One group discussing the Finnish EU presidency that is coming up in 2019 and the values of Europe as well, European values. And a third group discussing what the world would be if there was no EU. And during the next 2 hours, we will both hear about those discussions and hear from the young people themselves. We're also going to hear from VP Katainen, and then later there's also going to be a panel. So it's a very exciting 2 hours that we're going to have. The event is hosted by Alliansi, the umbrella organization of Finnish youth organizations, the European Youth Parliament Finland, European Movement in Finland and JEF Finland as well, the European Commission representation in Finland, European Parliament Information Office in Finland, and naturally also we're supported by the venue Hanasaari. So first up, I will give the floor to Gunvor Kronman, who is the CEO of Hanaholmen, to hear a few welcoming words. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much at the eve of Finnish Independence Day, almost. Distinguished guests, warmly welcome to Hanaholmen. It's such a great pleasure to see you all here. We, especially at Hanaholmen, are really happy to host these kind of events because our main task is to foster cooperation between Finland and Sweden, but maybe more and more importantly also Finland and Sweden in connection with third parties. And for the time being, I think it's very hard to find a third party that could be more important than the European Union, and to discuss exactly what you have been discussing here, the European future, in so many different ways. As you are dealing with questions of values and a European future, you probably found out that there is no future actually without taking some historical events into account. This concerns us at Hanaholmen as well. The establishment of Hanaholmen is closely bound up with the modern history of Finland and Sweden. In 1967, Sweden wrote off most of the outstanding debt arising from its loans to Finland during the Second World War. A policy decision was then taken by the government of Finland to build a Finnish and Swedish cultural center here in Finland, serving both nations as a whole. For now more than 40 years, Hanaholmen has expanded and improved connections between Finland and Sweden in the spheres of culture, business and civil society. Nowadays, often, as I mentioned, in a broader international context, like today when we're dealing with large questions concerning the future of Europe. And what you are dealing with is extremely important. There is nowadays an increased focus on the European Union as perhaps even the main area for regional solutions. In order to find global solutions and in order to make our perspectives heard within the European Union, Nordic-Baltic cooperation, for example, is seen as an increasingly interesting topic. Together, our countries can achieve results beyond what is possible to accomplish when acting alone. We hope that you have really enjoyed yourselves these days here at Hanaholmen, that you've gotten new insights, that you have gotten multiple of different views, that you met new nice people, and that you really had a good time. Actually, I heard some rumors that the sauna department this morning was very popular. I'm happy to hear that. I also hope that you enjoyed our new facilities. Hanaholmen has been more or less rebuilt for the past 2 years in order to have a new, fresh Hanaholmen celebrating Finland 100. I want also to thank our partners in organizing this event, the Finnish Youth Cooperation Alliance, EIAP Finland, JEF Finland, the European Movement Finland, Europe and the European Commission representation here in Finland, and the European Parliament Information Office in Finland for arranging this event in cooperation with us. Especially thank you to Nora Löfström from Alliance for very good cooperation in this and in so many other events that we cooperated with Alliance and with you personally. Thank you for that. And with these welcoming words, I wish you a really fruitful and active discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Gunvor, and thank you, Hanasaari. As you might have seen, to my right and to your left, there is something interesting happening. We have illustrator Salla Lehtipuu. And she's here to draw what is happening during the next 2 hours, so it's very exciting. We will see what the outcomes will be. Also, if you happen to be on Twitter or any other social media, you can use the hashtags Future of Europe. The same in Swedish and Finnish if you wish, but Future of Europe is the hashtag. So, let me welcome Vice President Jyrki Katainen. We will hear a keynote speech from you on what your thoughts are about the future of Europe. And after that, there will be some thoughts from the participants of the Youth Convention as well. So thank you, and a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate the opportunity to discuss the future of Europe with you guys. This is one of my favorite topics, like I guess it's one of your favorite topics because you're here. But we need more and more discussions on the future of Europe. Let me first tell why, and then I present some ideas what do I personally expect from the future of Europe. I would like to keep this session as informal as possible, if you don't mind. So, good. So, if looking at few years back, the economic crisis colored the whole EU debate by very dark colors. And I was in the national politics at that time. I was a member of Finnish Parliament, but also Finance Minister of Finland and later Prime Minister of Finland. And I participated to all those nasty economic discussions in the EU level. I participated to build up all those bailout packages, which were highly unpopular in many countries, including Finland. And no politicians who were not forced to touch the EU issues did not want to discuss Europe at all, more than criticizing that all negative issues are coming from Europe. It's all about the crises and crisis management. So we were in a situation where national ownership towards the future of Europe was very, very thin. So the key political figures and citizens were not interested that much about the future of Europe. Nobody had any serious expectations. or maybe somebody, but the minority of the people had some expectations on future of Europe. Then something started to happen. We saw interesting elections in the United States, which led to the changes in US politics. US wanted to change the typical political course on many areas. For instance, open rules-based trade is not popular anymore in the US. Instead, protectionism is rising. Also, multilateralism has got some hit, and unilateralism has been rising. We also saw very unstable neighbor to us, Russia. Or let's not say it's unstable, it's very stable. But we saw that Russia is capable and willing to invade part of its independent neighbors. We also saw very serious terrorist attacks at the heart of Europe. Belgium-educated diploma engineer attacked in very close to the European Commission headquarters in Brussels, killing several other Europeans. We faced very significant migration flows which tested the limits of our member states. Some member states welcomed refugees and migrants, whereas the others said that we don't have a culture to tolerate difference, and that's why we don't want to open our doors. Even those countries who welcomed refugees because they felt that they have a human responsibility towards the other people, the number of refugees tested the limits of tolerance and also societal structures, how to deal with a big number of people who are fleeing cruelties in their own home country. Then we also experienced serious cyber attacks against our societies. Attackers from third countries tested the cybersecurity structures in the United States in the presidential campaign. Also, they attacked in French elections. Third-party attackers have been involved in Brexit referendum, as well as in the latest Catalonian issue incident. So all these things, addition to climate change, fight against climate change, and other a little bit better known challenges came to the agenda. And I felt that sometimes early this year, maybe February or March, we started to see counter-reaction from the citizens. I forgot to mention fake news, which is a relatively new phenomenon. So when I visited our member states, discussed with students in the universities or with other citizens, many people said something like this, that enough is enough. We want to get some common sense on things again. We can't accept the phenomena which are destabilizing our societies. Many people were worried about also, addition to issues which I already mentioned, worried about the actions against rule of law in the EU, for instance. And I must say that I'm a bit surprised that many people seem to think that EU should do something. So after many years of silence, after many years when people or decision makers did not expect anything from Europe, out of the sudden, people wanted to get order coming from the EU. And this is a good sign. So now the national ownership is strengthening. It's becoming stronger. People expect more from Europe. And it has led to a situation where governments have changed their policies. Once the voters have started to expect more from Europe, the governments have started to set targets. What do they expect from the future Europe? And my work in the Commission today is very different than what it was a year ago. A year ago, we still were more or less like in a crisis management mode. We were just slowly recovering from Brexit referendum. And we only saw all those challenges I mentioned. But now the tide has changed. And this is very good. Because EU is not Brussels. EU is a community for Europeans which is supposed to make life easier and more secure. And that's why people must have expectations towards the future of Europe. Sometimes in this kind of events I want to put even the word EU aside. Because EU is a tool, but now we should talk more about the future of Europe, and then we can decide who does and what. Then I would like to elaborate a bit on what do I personally expect from the future of Europe. I list issues where we can do more, and also the areas and issues in which integrated Europe can be a positive tool to solve the challenges. First thing, we have to pay attention to the security. I mean internal security like combating terrorism, cybersecurity, and traditional military security. EU must be a more secure place for our citizens than what it is at the moment. Our security, our European sovereignty has been challenged by many ways. And I wouldn't underestimate the role of cyber on this. It's much more easy, much cheaper, and politically more correct to destabilize our member states by using cyber weapon than conventional weapons. Nobody dies, nobody gets wounded, but the result is can be significant if you destabilize the societies from inside. And in order to defend freedoms which we stand for, we must take this cyber threat seriously. No country alone is strong enough or capable enough to address these cyber issues. Also, when we have created a continent which is a continent of freedom, people are allowed to travel and work and study across borders. There are always people who misuse these liberties and freedoms. And as a responsible persons, we have to address these issues. We don't tolerate misbehavior or misuse of the freedom and liberties. Second thing, which I consider is a relatively new phenomenon but very serious, and certainly an area where we have to cooperate much more, is the defense of fundamental values, like rule of law. Unfortunately, we have two member states, especially one, in which rule of law has been tested very seriously. The whole EU is based on the values of liberal democracy. And it means, for instance, that judges cannot be nominated by politicians, or judges cannot be liable to politicians. The separation of justice from political decision-making is a fundamental value of liberal democracy. And now some of our member states are breaching the limits of this. There's only a little step forward that if we to violate to human dignity and human rights. So I thought, and many other people thought, that we have already passed a point where basic values of liberal democracy must be actively defended. But this is not the case. So we must make sure that the future of Europe is based on democracy, human rights, and rule of law. You cannot choose one over the other. If you prefer human rights and rule of law but not democracy, the packet doesn't function. Third element, which is completely different, is to create Europe a continent which is agile to apply new technologies, especially artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence and machine learning will be a major opportunity for our societies. It may also raise some challenges. What does it mean, humanly thinking? And at the same time, when we are considering how to regulate the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning, we should be enabling continent. So there are lots of strong developments or strong phenomena which will change the way the economy is operating. Artificial intelligence, machine learning is one, which brings me to another point which I find very crucial for the future of Europe is circular economy. It's another area where we should be where we should represent as a vanguard continent. So what we should do in Europe in order to incentivize businesses to change their existing linear economic models or business models to more circular, and by doing so to strengthen the sustainability of our economic structure. Jumping completely to another point again, I think Europe needs more active foreign policy. As long as we share the same value basis, we should be more capable to act together in international fora. And sometimes this may need stronger muscles. So if we want to stop cruelties to happen in our neighboring area, for instance, it's not enough just to send a resolution where we deeply condemn wrongdoings. We should be capable to interfere to the situation where human rights are violated, for instance. And my final point comes from the social dimension. I don't believe that we can ever, or at least in the foreseeable future, to replace national social security systems or structures by EU ones, because the cultures and the business logics of our member states differs that much. But we still should concentrate on issues which will strengthen our member states and the whole EU's social responsibility and justice. And there I want to raise two issues. The first one is labor rights, workers' rights. Nobody should be abused within the EU in labor market. And the second is education. If you look at, for instance, the quality or differences in the quality of education between our member states, no wonder we still have inequality problems in the EU. I have pushed this policy in the Commission. I would like to use, for instance, country-specific recommendation much often in education. We should evaluate the quality of member states' education system, for instance, teachers' training systems, and give recommendations to member states to reform the education if there is a need for this kind of reforms. Because I personally believe that it's the best way to increase social justice and equality. It's also necessary for from competitiveness point of view. So even though Commission has very little competence on education, it does not mean that we should not pay more attention to this sector, because it's so important from economic and social point of view. Erasmus Plus is an excellent tool which we have already. I'm a former Erasmus student, and I must admit that the year in the University of Leicester in UK really changed my life. I wouldn't be here, or at least in this position, without an Erasmus program. So even though commissioners are not allowed to speculate or prejudge the outcome of next multi-annual financial framework negotiations, but I wouldn't mind if we could double the means of Erasmus+. I also would like to encourage more teachers to use Erasmus opportunities, because can you imagine that if last year Finland sent 3,500 teachers to another country to participate in the Erasmus program, which is quite a big number. But imagine if it was 5,000. If all the countries would set aspirational target how many teachers per year should use Erasmus opportunities, I think it would be the fastest way to increase our teachers' social capital. You always learn something when you cooperate with your international partners. Also, vocational trainers should use much more Erasmus opportunities than what they do at the moment. So we need internationally competent and experienced professionals, and Erasmus should not only be a prerogative of university students. So, dear friends, thank you once more for giving me a chance to discuss with you on the future of Europe, and now I'm eagerly waiting for your contribution and what kind of ideas you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, VP Katainen. Those are interesting remarks. Let's see what young people have to say to that. Before we go to the presentations from each group, those who know that they will be presenting, do prepare yourself mentally. We're going to have a short look at what's happened today and yesterday. There is a video that has been made by Veikka Partanen, who has been an active member in the European Youth Parliament. And we will see what discussions he had with some of the participants when he was interviewing them on their thoughts about Europe and the future of Europe. So here we go.
What does Europe mean to you?
Europe is a place that allows me to branch out and travel to maybe get better career opportunities.
A strong global actor. It's a regional actor, but also global actor in very important issues.
What does it mean to be European?
It means to belong in a group of 500 million people, to belong to a group where everyone can be who they are.
What does you mean to you?
European Union to me mainly free roaming, free movement, and all of the other human rights and freedoms you can never imagine.
Where do you think EU is headed?
I think what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
And I think the EU has some problems that we need to solve. And I think that's the next steps they have to take.
If anything, I think the EU is united in Brexit.
Describe Europe with one word.
Integrated.
Togethership. I don't know if that's a real word.
Hope.
Possibilities.
Okay.
It's complicated.
So thank you very much, Veikka, for this excellent video, and thank you for the participants for their contributions. So now for the exciting part of the day, we will hear the outcomes of the discussions that have been going on for almost a day, yesterday and today, whatever. So firstly, I would like to invite presentations from the scenarios of the future of Europe.
Okay, hi everyone. We're Kaisa and Aleksanteri from the first workshop, and our workshop was about the 5 scenarios that were published by Jean-Claude Juncker in March this year. And now we would like to present the conclusions that resulted from our committee work yesterday and today. So first of all, we would like to start with what kind of future we want for Europe. And we want Europe where solidarity, transparency, and civic participation are fundamental. They're already fundamental values, but we are still, nevertheless, we're concerned about the Euroscepticism and populism that have been on the incline for in the last few years. And therefore, we would urge a democratic reform without further complicating the decision-making process, and also ensuring and maybe reinforcing the direct participation of citizens and their representation within the EU. And this could maybe also be a means to fight the lack of legitimacy that there is at the moment among the national populations of the European Union. And therefore, furthermore, we urge the European Union to set priorities in order to function more efficiently. First of all, on concentrating on existing policy fields that already work well and projects that already work well. For example, Erasmus Plus was a really good example of that. Above all, we would like to also concentrate on global and urgent issues that touch all the member states. For example, the environmental issues, or the refugee issue, or cybersecurity. And therefore, we would like to rather deepen instead of broadening the cooperation.
Next, we recommend the European Union to protect and promote European values of democracy, equality, freedom, and justice, the values that this union have been built on. We encourage the EU to advocate human rights and strongly condemn actions that undermine these values and principles, both inside and outside EU. And this is what we want. We want that EU intervenes more and more all the undermining of these values, especially within the Union. We believe that the European Union must achieve the agreed United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and lead by examples in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda globally. The 2030 Agenda essentially includes social, economic, ecological, and cultural issues, and that is why it is so important. It includes issues from all sectors of the life, and EU has to be the leader in implementing the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, to continue directly, we had a group that discussed the values of Europe and the youth EU presidency. Do we have a group like that? Yes. Welcome to the floor. The stage is yours.
So my name is Sidra and I'm from Sweden.
I'm Sana from Finland. And I'm Suvi from Finland.
And much of what has been said is going to be repeated many times. I would just like to start by saying A warm welcome to the Honorable Commissioner, Jyrki Katainen, and other distinguished delegates, and thank you so much for this opportunity. So, as has been mentioned, for the last 2 days we have been debating about the core values of the European Union and why they are important to us. And let us be clear, it has not been an easy task, featuring rainbows and unicorns and glitter. During our discussions, we faced many challenges. We didn't always agree, and we spoke of many issues that are on the rise, but our generation is not one that stops at the discussion level, and we have some solutions that we wish to present today. So what are values? They're pillars of identity. They shape the way we think, what our society looks like, and where we are headed. In today's world, we cannot turn a blind eye when our core values are threatened. We need to talk about them, defend them, and raise them up in our actions. And we're talking, of course, about democracy, solidarity, and human rights. Now, all of this sounds a lot like a cliche, but we really do believe in these. We have the right to be hopeful and believe in our right to change the world. And we, the young people, are worried about the recent developments in Hungary and Poland that affect other young people just like us. And so as the European community, we need to act.
Firstly, we want to talk about democracy. There are serious problems in how it is working right now. We are lacking meaningful participation. We don't have enough access to political participation in ways that are understandable and accessible to different parts of our society, especially the young people. Many feel powerless and that they don't have a say in their own future and in their societies in general. We need new ways to engage and be active. One should not have to be a politician to feel like they are contributing. We need to make sure that all groups, including minorities and marginalized groups, have awareness, access, and resources to meaningfully participate in the decision-making, not just on paper, not just in the official PR photos, to be actually present in the rooms where decisions are made. Young people are not living in a bubble where they are affected by youth policies only. Youth are living in the world. We need to be able to speak about all the issues in our societies. We are going to give you a couple examples on how to make youth more present in the decision-making in the European Union and how to bring European Union closer to the youth. We also think that the youth in the European Union should feel connected to the youth in other parts of the world. So we are going to drop in a few suggestions on how to do that.
Many of the European countries have a UN youth delegate. We demand legislation that requires the EU member states to have a youth representative for at least the high-level meetings. One of the key values of the EU is solidarity. We want to bring youth closer together inside the EU. The EU has, for example, the Erasmus Plus program, connecting youth and people working with youth inside Europe and neighboring countries. We demand more resources allocated to the program, as well as extending it outside the EU and neighboring countries. The youth around the world have similar hopes, values, and struggles. We wish to see youth exchange programs extended outside neighboring countries to connect them. We also want to raise another side of solidarity. It should not be confined to our present generation. We need to take into account the future generations as well and make sure that we have a future. We need to make big decisions now in order to ensure that our development is sustainable. Thank you.
Last but not least, there's a group that discussed the world without the European Union. This sounds very serious, so I'm excited to hear what's next. So please give a huge applause to the last group.
Yes, hello. My name is Jasmine Nedergaard. I'm a Swedish-speaking Finn living here in Finland.
Hi, my name is David. I'm Icelandic. So we have highlighted the main idea of the EU, discussed the history of the EU and how Europe would look without it. Then we moved on today's Europe, and the majority of our group thinks the EU needs to change. We have therefore made some changes and recommendations of different categories, which we will introduce now.
So these categories are really a lot of general topics, such as politics and guiding principles, but even more specific fields also, such as trade, environment, agriculture, security, foreign policy, social matters, and finance, labor issues, and researches. And if you have got some paper on your table, it's our complete work we have there. But we will now speak about some of these, and that is the youth and participation, and then also about environment.
We think it's important that the EU continues to strengthen the participation of the youth. Moreover, the youth participation should not be limited to youth policy, but there should be more holistic cross-sectoral view. The EU should put emphasis on preparing long-term impact assessment of decision, so the interest of children, youth, the future generations could be protected effectively. The preparation of such impact assessment needs to utilization of research.
And we think it's also important that all people are represented in order to increase equality and legitimacy. And there are currently in Europe many vulnerable groups, such as the youth, minorities, disabled people, asylum seekers, and indigenous people, who do not right now have equal opportunities to participate. And for these reasons, we think that the EU should take an initiative to develop a new strategy to on this equality, strengthening, and position of these vulnerable groups. We also think that the EU should make a stronger climate policy, which is more ambitious, contains stricter legislations, and takes a stronger stand against climate change, because we can't live if we can't breathe. For example, we think that we should forbid the use of single-use plastic. We think we should forbid the use of non-renewable energy, and we think we should develop, support climate change-friendly diet development. And we have, as you can see, a lot of more here. We can't talk about them all, but we think that these issues that we have here on the paper in front of many of you is things that we should all take into account. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for an excellent presentation for all of the three groups, and for the huge work that you have had in compiling all these points. I will now ask VP Katainen if you wish to take the floor and react to these points that were raised by the participants of the Youth Convention. And then we will briefly take a few questions as well from the floor, if there's time. So please.
Yeah. Sure. Thanks again for your applaud. So I must say that I'm pretty impressed. So I don't know where to start from. There were so many good points. I tried to bundle a bit your comments and answer, or not try to answer, but just to make some comments to your points. First, you seems to have quite a global view on the issue, on the EU. So what I try to say is that you don't see EU only as a money machine. Believe me, there are quite many prime ministers who seems to think that EU is the best money machine they have seen ever. And that's it. So you seems to have much more expectations on Europe. So EU could be a global actor. It could be a union for values, and it does not function without thriving or a strong value basis. So the whole future of Europe is anchored to universal values, universal rights and obligations and liberal democratic values. It's very good news. I do hope you could push this message forward by using social media, by using your contacts to your country's decision makers. As we discussed and as I also mentioned before, we cannot take this anymore for granted. It has been questioned harder than for many decades in Europe. And that's why your message to the decision makers of Europe for strengthening the value basis is very, very important. Just few issues which are also mentioned in this very comprehensive package of recommendations, or as you said, these are not recommendations, they are demands. So thanks for raising the single-use plastic, because we are preparing a plastics package which aim is to reduce the amount of plastic consumed in Europe. Second, to promote bio-based plastics, and third, create a single market for secondary plastics, basically recycled plastic, much more. And the single-use plastic will play some role in our proposal. I will not tell you yet what role, but we will say something about it. You also raised the issue of labor, trade, environment, of course, agriculture. So the labor issue I find very crucial, because the labor rights, equal treatment of workers cannot be separated from the right bread of Europe, or the fundament of Europe, which is single market. Single market is one of the core issues in the integration, and we cannot have a sustainable single market if rights are misused. So that's why we need, or people are not treated fairly. So that's why this is another pillar also in my mind in the social aspect of Europe. Final point, I'm happy you raise trade here, because trade is a way, or trade agreements, trade policy is one of the ways to govern globalization. Many people find the word free trade negatively. For many people, free trade means trade free of rules. And actually, the truth is just the opposite. That is the reason why EU is negotiating with 20 different countries at the moment on trade agreement, because it's the only way to create rules for global trade, and also to crowd in social values, environmental values to international trade. And as much as we are in favor of globalization, openness in the world, we must make sure that the openness is fair. And that's why we need rules-based world order, and trade policy plays a crucial role there. I hope that you would consider this aspect also, because sometimes it's very easy to say that trade, okay, it's commercial, it's economy, It means that rich people are getting richer and those who are poor are getting poorer. But don't blame trade on that. Blame your governments if this is the case. Because if you look at, for instance, Nordic countries, it's good to talk about Nordic countries here. Nordic countries' welfare society is highly based on trade. No Nordic country can afford to run world's most generous welfare societies without the income coming from trade. If incomes are not distributed fairly, then it's a political problem in the particular country. But don't blame trade. So don't shoot the cow which you can milk. And that's why we need more fair trade, and this is where EU is a global actor. Thank you very much.
We have time for a few questions from the floor, and I will have Nora running around, and I'll take a few questions, and then we will maybe still hear a reply. So please raise your hand if you want to ask any questions from VP Katainen. Here we
go. Well, one. Oh, okay, it works. I should go up. Okay, thank you for the great opportunity to participate. But my name is Ekaterina, and I'm from that very stable country from the east. You mentioned that fair trade issues, and I think it's indeed very important. But actually, what is the actual issue now is building of the Nord Stream, the second gas pipeline that goes through Baltic Sea and connects Russian and German soil. I want to ask you, what do you think about that project, firstly? And secondly, may it, in your opinion, result into asymmetric economic development and asymmetric political development of the European member states? And may it challenge the sustainable development of the Union as the whole? Thank you.
Shall we take another question? Cedra, you had a question?
Okay. I was wondering about a certain decision that was made in the spring by the EU court. I'm sure you're aware of the decision that I'm speaking of, giving the right to the employer to decide what the employees can wear and not wear, in particular when it comes to religious self-expression. And that is a very important part of the rule of law that ensures that individuals get to exercise their freedom of being able to wear what they want to wear. Do you think that such decisions should be allowed to be made, considering this sort of this democratic right that every citizen should have? Thank you.
Can someone hear me? Great. So, you mentioned the attitude and policy changes after Brexit. So, people coming into more pro-European and pro-integration, but the situation here, at least here in Finland and many other countries, is that the official policy of the state remains firmly against integration. So, in your opinion, what can realistically be achieved in the field of integration and cooperation when the official policy is not for more EU?
Jasmine again. So I'm studying economics and I'm writing my thesis about automation and economics theory. And I'm asking you, you talked about automation, and I'm wondering, does EU have a plan, like a risk plan, if like some of these like big papers that I have read are talking about like 54% risk of automation of the global labor market in like 20 years. Does EU have a risk plan about automation? Thank you. Yes.
Okay. My name is Henna, I come from the University of Tampere, and my question would be that you are talking much about human rights. I'm a human rights researcher myself. So what kind of measures are you taking as an EU to have more inclusive participatory system? Because currently the language the EU is using is quite difficult for many people, also youngsters, but also disabled people and so on. And what are the concrete steps that you would do that the participation would be easier and EU would be, more transparent, easier to understand, and so on? Thank you. And one final from here.
Hi, I'm Niklas Falkoma from the International Committee of Alliance. I'm interested, how do you see young people's role in EU's decision-making? How do we ensure meaningful participation? When do we get from the point of young people are listened to the point that we're actually invited to the decision-making? Why do we have a separate EU-Africa Youth Summit? Why don't we invite these people to the actual summit and have a youth representatives there?
Okay, thank you. So first on Nord Stream, Commission is looking at this issue from the energy security point of view. So one aspect is to look at the pipeline from Russia through the seabed to Germany would diversify gas transmission into Europe. The others are saying that it will limit the other options. So as it is a commercial project, we have to look at it as a commercial project, but also from the energy security point of view. So Commission does not have any particular attitude against gas coming from Russia to Europe, because here again, more integrated we are, the more useful it is. So from EU point of view, cooperation, increasing cooperation with Russia would strengthen ties, especially commercial ties and political ties over time. So we are assessing this project from energy security point of view, and the main aim is to get diverse energy, a diverse network of energy, so that no country would be dependent on from one direction of energy. So this is the whole idea behind behind our energy policy. Second, on this court ruling. So court has done its decision, and we have to follow its decision. It's part of the rule of law. But I may have my own opinion on this, what is right, and I'm in this kind of issues I'm more in favor of individual choices. People are supposed to be allowed to decide what do they wear, and what are their personal choices in terms of, for instance, clothing. So, but as you said, court has made its ruling, and it's the decision. Did you mean the Finnish government when you said that official policy is? May I clarify? Did you mean the Finnish government, that the official policy is that not more EU, or?
Yes, the Finnish government.
Okay, so I suppose not to interfere the Finnish domestic politics, but I can say that it's not categorically, at least as far as I have understood right, Finnish government's position has not been categorically not more EU. Finland has been extremely active on defense issues, for instance. EU, together with Czech Republic, then there are Germany, France, Italy, and Spain. The 6 countries have formed a core group of deeper defense cooperation in the EU. This is one area. Second is circular economy. There Finland has been very active. But certainly there may be differences in views of governmental parties, how much they are willing to cooperate. In next 2 years, all the governments, including Finnish government, should be prepared to take positions, forward-looking positions on EMU issues, for instance. There will be lots of changes in economic and monetary union. defense has already been mentioned, other policy areas. So EU is evolving, and I do encourage people to stop talking about threat of federalism. Those people who usually says that we are somewhere in between federalists and anti-EU movement, I don't see people talk, or I don't hear people talking about federalism which would shut down national parliaments or governments and be replaced by only European decision making. This is not kind of realism, and I hope Czech people don't disappoint, but don't be disappointed. But I mean, this is not an issue. So pragmatic approach is enough. So if we decide that security is an issue where no country alone can find solutions, or climate change, we have to address it together, or we need to create a European-wide regulation or regulatory environment for circular economy or artificial intelligence, then we have to decide it on the European level. It's as simple as this. I don't know if this is federalism, then it is. But you just simply cannot decide it on national level. Whether we have, or do we have a risk plan for automatizations and all the consequences of it? We don't have exact risk plan, but what we are doing at the moment is this strategy for artificial intelligence. So we try to identify areas where we have to do European regulation, and try to identify areas where we could use more, for instance, Horizon 2020 resources in order to boost artificial intelligence. I don't personally believe that automation and robotization will, by nature, destroy jobs in terms of number. For instance, if you look at Finland's town, Uusikaupunki, where Daimler established a car production site. They are producing Mercedes-Benzes there. The Uusikaupunki is the town in Finland where robots per capita is highest and where vacancies per capita is highest. So the more robots there are, the more jobs there are for people. What is sure is that automatization will change the nature of work, or some jobs may disappear or will disappear. Just like what happened when cars came to the market and replaced horses. So, having said all this, we have to look at the functionality of our education system, also social security system. So we have to help people to go over this destruction, even if it was creative destruction. But we cannot let people to pay a price of changes. What to do, or what we are doing in order to make it easier for understanding the EU decision making. I will bundle this together with young people's role in decision making. EU institutions, especially the European Parliament and Commission, tries to organize events, tries to explain understandably what we are doing and what we are aiming to do. But I agree with you that sometimes political language is very, very complicated and cumbersome. It's the same thing in national politics. The young people especially, but also the others, are always complaining that we don't understand what you are talking about. But I have a very strong view on this, that no matter how much we try, I mean, Commission and the European Parliament, how much we try to explain things, it does not get through unless national decision makers are not involved. If governments and members of national parliaments are silent on Europe issue, there is not, I mean, our message will not reach the ordinary citizens as effectively as if national decision makers would explain it to their own voters and citizens. Also, other civic organizations plays a crucial role. We do our best, but I mean, Alliance is much better explaining EU policies to many of you than me, for instance. So that's why what I said for the beginning, the stronger national ownership we have, the better. Because then the responsibility lies on the right place. Responsibility of decisions, but also responsibility of explaining what has been done and why. So thank you very much for your comments and questions. I wish you a very pleasant afternoon session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jyrki, Katainen, for your time and for being here with us and for listening to what we had to say. And we hope you will take this forward as well.
Thank you.
One more huge applause. All right. So next up, we're going to have a panel with some of our Finnish members of the European Parliament, as well as a representative from the European Youth Forum and the president of JEF Finland. So please welcome on stage MEP Virkkunen, Kumpula-Natri, Kristen Aigro from European Youth Forum, and Tuomas Tikkanen, JEF Finland.
Free seating. That's
you can choose your own.
Do the designated seats? Or
no,
wherever
it was
we
free
want.
seating.
Free seating. Right.
I hope you feel comfortable with the seat of your choice. So welcome on stage. I hope you have enjoyed the first part of the session, listening to what we have had to say as the participants of the Youth Convention. You have all in front of you a bubble, a speech bubble. One like this. And I would like to start the discussion by asking you to draw your vision of the future of Europe. So how would you see the future of Europe? What do you see Europe will be in 2025? You can draw that on the bubble, please. Do we have more pens? They're on the seats, I hear. Aha. Now we need music. Don't cheat, don't watch on each other's bubbles. This is getting exciting.
Takes a little bit of time.
And don't look at what's happening over there by the illustrator. There's some other drawings of the future of Europe taking place. All right, I'll give you 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right then. So, we will start from here. You can present yourself as well, so that the people here know who you are and where you come from and what brings you here. And then you can share a few words about your drawing. So please.
Yes. Okay. This is me, my future Europe, also for my colleagues. So I love Europe with the stars, old symbol. Then I hope that we can use the peace symbol for the Europe, and I hope that the heart and euro, so it means the love and then prosperity with the European cooperation. So my name is Miapetra Kumpula-Natri. I'm a member of the European Parliament, has been there for 3 years, and before I was 11 years in the national parliament, all the time in the EU committee. And prior I worked for the European movement and European youth movement, this Eurooppa Nuoret, where Tuomas is now from. So I have started actually in '96 when the first ever European elections organized. And then there was some just 1 or 2 years older boy called Jyrki Katainen as well. So I have followed quite carefully his career as well. I was elected then, so it was still, I was 24. So I'm very happy to be with you and try to think as young people. And I want to make the commitment that you should not play with the youth ball only, but on everything what is happening in society. I took that message seriously.
Please tweet that.
Please, my assistant is here, tweet that.
Thank you. I'm Kristen from the European Youth Forum. Actually, we have created a vision document for the future of Europe with the European Youth Forum in the spring, and you can see it on my Twitter page, for example. So you can look that up. We have a whole picture of what we see the future of Europe looking like to accompany the document. But then I just wrote #YouthUp, and I hope that Europe will be youth up, that young people will be heard more and will really be part of decision making in Europe, and their vision will have been taken forward for this future that we're headed to. So I went for Youth Up, and I tried to draw like a Twitter bird, but this is just so failed.
Yes, thank you. I'm Henna Virkkunen from European Parliament, and first of all, I want to thank you all because it was very, very interesting to hear all these previous speakers here and the work what you have been doing in your groups today and yesterday. I think it was very, very important, and you had really, really good points. Same things what we are thinking all the time, but I have to say that often when politicians are thinking about future of Europe, they are often thinking also about what does it mean for their power, how the new structure will fit for their member states or for their political party or something like that. And when you are speaking about future of Europe, I can really hear that you are thinking about the young people of Europe, that what kind of future you would like to have in Europe. Yeah, this picture, this is not so beautiful, I have to say, but because I think that the biggest achievement for European Union is the free movement of people and goods, and that's something what I would like to encourage in future. So I would like to see Europe where the people are moving much more. These are active, Erasmus students who are studying here all over in Europe, and they are traveling and working, and there's also a few robotic cars here driving, because I'm also a very big friend of digitalization, and I hope that Europe will be also a leader in this field in the future. So I would like to see very active common area in the future where we are really, creating the common single market and that kind of culture where the people can really benefit from different cultures and languages, and they would move freely around. And of course, it's based for rule of law and democracy and human rights. And I would like to have also Europe what is leading also the global processes like it's already doing now, because as we know, USA is not so active in the global agreements anymore, and Trump wants to build walls, and we want to build bridges from Europe. So I think Europe should also take more that role as a leader in the global world.
Thank you very much. My name is Tuomas Tikkanen. I'm the president of Young European Movement in Finland, where I want to create a positive change and strive for further integration of the European Union and create a better world in that way. And it's great to be here with all of you, hearing all of these enthusiastic ideas, and also with this great panel. I think all of your drawings were already so beautiful that mine actually does not scale up. This is probably the reason I ended up here talking, not drawing. So this is my idea of my vision of Europe. It's as you can see, it's Europe in a map in some way. I try to include everything. There's a star in the middle, and we also have Euro. And I invite all of our Nordic friends, also from Norway and Iceland, to join the European Union, as well as all Nordic countries to join the Euro, because only together we are as strong as we can be. And also, when it comes to Nordic countries, Baltic countries in the European Union can only be stronger as a group if we all are active in the different institutions, in different processes the union has to offer. So I hope in maybe 10 years, 30 years, we have a unified union with further unified foreign policy, unified economic policy. But I do not wish to see a place where all of the power has been taken to Brussels. That's not what federalism means in my understanding. It's that we have strong countries, strong blocs, strong nations, where we can offer our citizens everything or different ways of living a good life, and have certain policies, important policies in our national countries, such as education policies and social policies, and so on and so on. But when it comes to policies that actually create added value on the European level, such as foreign policy and security policy, I hope that those are the policies where we are ready to go further and take them to the common table, not give them to anyone else, because that's not what European decision making is. It's about making decisions on common ground. So this is my vision of future Europe, and I will probably never be an artist, but let's hope that I will have a chance to speak about future in the future as well.
We're all artists in our own way, Thomas. There was one group here at the Youth Convent or Convention discussing European values and focusing mostly on that. And I can see that in your drawings as well, you're trying to bring one of those or some of those values as well. What do you see are the most important values of Europe? We can start with Thomas.
Thank you. As Jyrki Katainen mentioned before, I think Europe should be, the reason of existence for Europe and the European Union is to be the beacon of light when it comes to human rights, democracy, freedom, liberties, also free trade, things that are now in global scale a bit going down. This is the reason of existence for the European Union.
Europe is based on common values. All the member states, they have agreed that they are respecting and promoting democracy, human rights, rule of law all the time, and it's the most important reason to become a member of European Union. And now I'm very worried about it, that there is some member states which are turning to other direction, and I think that we as European politicians, we should defend these core values. And I'm really a bit disappointed for the member states, because I think Commission has been doing their work very well, for example, with this case of Poland and the rule of law in Poland. But the member states, they should support the Commission's work, because commissioners, they are civil servants, so they can't really do anything more if the member states and the head of states are not supporting them, because this is our common Europe, and I think everyone should defend our common values. I see it's very important. Maybe if you take this.
Yes, this one works. Okay. Of course, I think we will agree that democracy, the rule of law, human rights are the values that the European Union has been based on and needs to be based on. But the problem rather is that are these values really something we've embraced? Do we see these values coming to life every day with the work of the European Union and its member states? I think one of the reasons why young people don't trust political institutions is because we hear about these values and we hear about these words, but we don't see them in action very often. And so I would really call for really being about these values we speak of. When times are tough, often the cuts start coming from education, social benefits, things that are human rights. Access to education is a human right, but then when it's the first place you cut from, clearly you don't really portray your values. So I would say that it's crucial for the younger generations to see that Europe, which is about everything we speak of, not just in words, but also in actions.
Do you have any concrete examples of that?
Well, what do you mean,
of how those? Where do we see a lack of those values? Where do we see those values are not happening?
even in simple participation in democracy, young people are very underrepresented. Only 0.5% of elected members of parliament in Europe are under the age of 30. Young people don't see themselves in politics, but it is our right to be there. It is our right to be part of the conversation. So this is something that needs to be improved. Political participation is also a human right. And right now in Europe, young people can't access it, unfortunately, sufficiently.
I agree a lot what has been said. If we think that what is the existence of society in general, it needs to be democracy. So I like very much the cyber security discussions now that also should rethink what are the critical infrastructure. Normally it is the food, energy, something like that. But now I think that it's time to think also that is the electoral system, the democracy, the vote, something that cannot be hacked, but something that is critical infrastructure. So I think this is the time we have to think about the different issues. It's fake news is something not new. There's also has always been the war propaganda, but then the new tools are there, and we have to upgrade also the society. But then what was not mentioned here very clearly was the solidarity, and it is mentioned here many times today by the youth generation, so by you. So I appreciate that a lot, because there's not society also if there's not solidarity at all. And then we need to speak loud that we want to continue that one. If it's full of individualism, there's not a glue that binds those individuals together, and then it's strengthened if there is some solidarity. And it's great that it was mentioned by you many times. And it brings me to the what should we do then? It's very difficult to say in the Nordics that let's make a common solidarity fund or whatever, because then we think that we are the rich Nord and then the South poor countries will get our monies. But it's not what is now written there in the solidarity. Yes, we do have some tools to also help for the underdeveloped parts of the countries or underdeveloped countries to grow. But also, according to these existing rules that we have for the Europe, there are articles also for equality, as it's a value, and there is also actions to be taken on that equality. And one concrete example is the parental leave. Commission proposed now 4 months for a woman, mother, but 4 months also for the father. And it was not because that one countries now have a maternal leave or parental leave for 9 months, and some countries only the European minimum of 4 months. But it is a Commission proposal now to help the fathers to be more equal. And it is not based on this internal market, single market thing that what is fair for the markets, but it is based on the fact that we have written in our treaties that equality between men and women needs to be strengthened, and Commission does its work. And as Henna mentioned, it's too often blocked by the member states, or if the member states do not approve, then we cannot make it further. We have tried it in the European Parliament to be helpful in this one, but then it was taking down because it took more than 10 years, and now it's again on the table. So this is a concrete action, as there were some groups saying that it's not only the words, the values, but put it in the concrete action. And I think that this is also need to be talked more in the society, what we can and what we should do. I'm not saying that we should do everything together when we talk about the equal possibilities or when we talk about solidarity. But yes, there are some concrete points, and now there is a good discussions in Europe what could the social pillar means. And that could mean that then we should report to each other, and then the Commission is keen on when it comes to the recommendations for the countries that how much with this year budget for the next year the school drop after school will finish before they got their comprehensive school finished. Because it has an effect. It's a national competence, but already today we give our budget for the Commission, then the other countries see them, so there's not surprises like it wasn't during the crisis from the Greece. And then the Commission gives recommendations, and I think they could be much more open for everyone what the recommendations are and what is the effect of the recommendation by the Commission.
I see Thomas wanted to react on that.
Should we just go with one mic, I think?
Press it until it's green, I hear.
Well, I already have this. Yes, I just quickly like point out that about the values and difference between European level and member states, when we think about the perceived gap between the values we say we have and the actions we say we are doing, I think we need to look at the levels of EU decision making, because we have the European level and then we have the level of national states and member states of the Union. So if, for example, if we talk about democracy, we might think that in the European level it's actually done quite good on some points. For example, in the Central Eastern European countries of the Union, actually the trust in EU democracy is higher than in their own democracies, in their own governmental democracies. And this also goes to the idea when we want something to be done by the EU, we actually don't always understand that what is the role of the member states and what's the role of the Union in this regard.
Next, I think we will take a question from the floor. Do we have any questions you would have for any of the... Yes, there we go.
Hi, my name is David. I think I refer my questions to Henna and Miapetra, and it's regarding like negotiations to enter the EU. I come from Iceland, and we're obviously not in the EU because we have big interests like the fishery and the green energy. Do you think that the EU would be able to sacrifice something in the policy, like between EU and Iceland, to make an agreement?
I think it has been more up to you that we haven't made a deal, because I have understood that the fishery policy has been very important issue for Iceland, like it is for Norway. But of course, I would like to see, of course, all the Nordic countries as members of European Union, and I hope that we can tighten our relationship also in the next years, because I think when we were speaking about values, so I think we are very much sharing the same values and ideas, but I think there is certain part of politics that Iceland wants to keep in the member state level, which we are deciding on European Union level. And agriculture and fishery policy, I think these are the important parts which are not so acceptable from Iceland's side. But of course, I welcome Iceland as a member of European Union. When you are ready, we are ready.
Thank you. If you could keep Iceland away from the football pitch, then I would take you in change for the EU membership. No, of course, I also have been a long time working with the Icelandic youth when I was young and so on. So I very much would like to see the whole Nordic, all the Nordic countries as members. Norway also welcome. And then for this question, so green energy should not be any issue to tackle, because EU is working for the green energy itself. So then we just like to make the definitions, and we want to make it sustainable. But then the whole discussion on the renewables is very hot now, because EU is ready to pass the way for the non-carbon society, and as the Iceland is. So I think there should be something that we could help each other in the understanding that the future, which is not carbon future. But then on the fishing policies, I think it is a common future for the seas, that we should really find out the ways to work together, even you're outside or inside, because the fishes are something that it's not easy to say that who country owns and what. So the fish itself in fishing, but then the whales and then some species that are not on the sustainable level. I think the discussions will emerge also inside of Iceland. So we want to save the future of the planet, so we want to save the future of the seas. So I just think that the main problems has not been these details, but in general the mood in Iceland, what I have been following, and also due to the hopeful or the crisis on the monetary union inside the EU, and then the different crises that Iceland had with its banks and some member states. So, but maybe now it's a few more years and it's enough after that one, and then the EU could be also more attractive for the Icelandic. So you are attractive for us.
Let's see what happens with Iceland, maybe.
Yeah, can we ask? Because it could be interesting to hear what kind of discussions there is now going on in Iceland about EU membership, or is there any?
So like some part of the nations want to have it to a national voting, and some people don't want it. So basically that's like just between parties, debates between parties.
But there isn't then anything special action going on right
No.
now in this issue?
No.
Do we have any other questions from the floor? Yes, go ahead.
So climate change is the biggest threat that the world and Europe is facing the next 10 years. How can we be sure that the member states take actions that are enough to meet the sustainable development goals?
Can I start now? I don't believe in 10 years, but we need to do actions like today and yesterday and during these 10 years. The one good is that we do have international mechanism now, like now we had, and we concluded something in Paris and in Bonn. But what we should also be to raise awareness so that it wouldn't happen as it happened in the United States, that you vote to powers for somebody who is still skeptical about all the science-based evidence that we do have and need for the action. But then it's very difficult and gets political. Yesterday I was leading the meeting in the parliament, 3 committees, agricultural, environmental, and then one on the science and energy and industry. So we had the science people, doctorates from different parts. So someone was scientist on the forestry, and another one from the forestry, and they have different opinions. How they act as a sink, how much you should use the forestry, how so much you should leave the forest untouched. Then you have the scientific people who count the atmospheric changes, and there I think is more coherent system. But then it's again that somebody asked the question that I saw the scientific article that says it's better to use coal than use renewables from biomasses. And then again, it's poor politicians. There we are and listen, and everybody says that we have the science-based evidence, and then we have the differences on there. But the big picture is there, and then we have to make the political commitments and try to keep everybody on board globally, but then act on the European level and keep commitment, our strong commitment to that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to say that I think you already earlier today highlighted the fact that as young people, we are far more serious about these issues. We understand that we're not going to have anywhere to live, anywhere decent to live at some point if we don't act now. In the United States, actually, there's a group of young people that have taken legal action against the government because they have failed to knowingly that there are environmental problems that are pressing due to human action, they have failed to take action against this. It's a serious problem, and I think that it also reflects the fact that young people are not sufficiently part of decision making. We need to be at the tables, we need to be at those meetings, because if we had to say and if we had more power, climate issues would be far, far higher on the agenda, and we would be far more ambitious in our actions against them. So I would say that this is a very good example of why more young people need to be in decision making.
Yeah, I think in European level we can do it, but it's much more challenging on the global level. I think Europe has been playing a very important role in globally, because without Europe, Paris Agreement wouldn't never happen. But now it's going to be very, very challenging to implement Paris Agreement. But from the European side, I trust that we can do our part, because if we are looking back to the history, we have been cutting emissions since 1990, 22% already in Europe, and in the same time our GDP has been growing 50%. So I think that sustainable growth is possible, because of course people are often or always thinking also the growth and jobs and industry and that kind of things, but I believe very much to technology, and I think we can solve these problems. And now we are going to also meet our targets in 2020, because we had this target that 20% renewables in Europe in 2020, 20% more energy efficiency, and so on. We will meet the targets. And now we are just negotiating on the targets 2030. And I think they have to be ambitious enough in European level, but also realistic, of course. And I think it looks very promising now. But the global level, it's going to be very, very challenging. and without United States maybe more challenging.
Thank you. Just a quick answer to this important question. Of course, firstly, we need to make investments in green technologies attractive to companies. But also in the European Union, I think we should move in the finances of the Union. We should put more focus in R&D and also climate technologies investments and so on and so on. So this is something the European Union could do. But the global scale is very important because EU only sums up a small amount of the world emissions. And yes, exactly, it's a really small amount. So we need to show example, of course, but we also could use our power in foreign politics and also power in free trade and in trade negotiations in general to actually push forward for climate-friendly trade deals to third countries as well.
I'd like to go back to what Kristen said about bringing young people to decision making, because I feel this is a very important point that was raised as well in one of the groups that I was facilitating. We had a discussion about how to improve democracy at a European level. And as Kristen said, if young people were there and at the tables where decisions are made, maybe the decisions would be different. So how do you see youth participation could be improved at the European level? Thomas?
Can I just quickly start by saying that I returned last week from EU-Africa summit, which was held in Ivory Coast in Abidjan. And the theme of the summit was investing in youth for a sustainable future, because Africa is a continent with the vast majority of the population being under 30 years old, almost 70%. For example, in Finland, it's 35%. And this is a really big thing for Europe as well. And I was the only youth delegate there in the whole meeting. Finland was the only country who actually took along a youth delegate among all European and African countries. So it was quite crazy. Although interesting to be there as a young person. Yes, exactly.
He was very active, like you all see.
Thanks. But when it comes to this, of course, as being a member of a youth organization, we have always pushed for more youth participation. But I personally think that now it also links to the power between EU institutions when it comes to European level. If the European Parliament had a stronger position in the European Union, I also think that youth issues could be heard more, because the European Parliament is an institution where citizens also have a higher say, and among that, also youth could have a higher say in matters.
Yeah, that is something what is very important for us as a politicians also, because we are representing citizens of Europe, and of course we are, or I am at least, and I think Miapetra and other politicians also, we are thinking very much of that how we could engage more the citizens to politics and how we could encourage the participation of young people. And I have to say that our organizations, like these organizations who are here today, you have been very active, and I think we have had very, very good cooperation, and it's great work what you are doing here in the member states level, local level, and also international level. When I was Minister of Local Governance in Finland, I made an initiative that all the municipalities in local level, they have to have mandatory youth council or youth board. And now the legislation is in force in Finland. Because I think it's very important that in the local level that there is more participants from the younger generations. And of course, it's not enough if there is council or board for young people. They have to have also budget to work, and they have to also have political power for real decisions. And I think this is very important that now we have started in the local level in Finland that. But there was also initiatives today, we heard earlier that we should also create that kind of structures in European level, and I think it's very interesting. We should think that kind of initiatives also. We are trying to be very open in the European Parliament. For example, all our committee meetings, they are web streamed, and I think in the way we are working very openly, but you have to be really interested in European politics if you are following the committee meetings and if you are reading the documents, for example, because as we heard today, the language is very, very difficult. Sometimes I'm thinking that is it because we are translating them for all official EU languages. And then I have to say that when we are reading the translations, maybe the language is not so, it's quite bureaucratic often. But of course, it's also if you are reading legislations in Finland or in any of the countries, they are not, the language is not very easy what we are using. And I think we have to think about the new ways how we could encourage the participation of all the citizens, and especially young people. And we are really willing to hear more your ideas also what to do.
Thank you. I would start by saying that young people, as we have seen today, are very interested in participating and in talking about the issues that matter to them in shaping their environment. But they don't seem to be doing that in the classic means of democracy, like voting. So we see these trends of young people not really voting that much, but they are active in other ways. They may be voting with their wallet by buying, let's say, local food. They may be active in youth organizations, very active on social media, talking about political issues they care about, bringing their friends along. So the question is how do political institutions become spaces again for young people also to take part? How do young people see that I have a voice there and I can say something and it's heard and it will have an impact? Because I think that the vision right now is that a young person won't have an impact. If I go and vote, I don't see any results. I don't see different politicians. I don't see a young person getting there who talks about the way I do, who cares about the issues that I do. I think the struggle is that we don't see ourselves represented in this traditional form of democracy, and therefore we kind of don't want to be there. We use other ways. We find our own ways. So this issue needs to be solved. We need to find a way to youth up our democracies, to innovate, to see what can we do, what can we change. And I would also like to say that I forgot, but I will. But yes, so let's decrease the amount of tokenistic forms of youth participation, of the photos even that we're just, of course we take photos and we all want to do that, but let's hear what young people have to say, and for political parties to actually promote young candidates, to really talk to young people about what their issues are and represent them in their manifestos. If you look at, for let's say, the UK elections, where very directly youth issues were targeted, it dramatically changed youth turnout. So we have positive examples of where young people have gone and voted as well. We have seen examples that it is possible, so let's follow that and let's bring also young people back to electoral democracy.
Yeah, the question now has been tackled from the perspective that the young people are active and want to engage. Then we have a problem with the young people who do not care. And then it's also that we start from the very principal part of the education, that is our educational systems, like pro-society or activity, and is it something that non-existent and you just study maths and IT sectors and languages and whatever. So I think that we have to really take this seriously in many parts, and also include the people and the youth maybe who is unemployed or just who didn't continue the education but just like dropped out from the school before the comprehensive school part. So I also want to make like a good reforms and look it from all the perspective parts. But then in especially like European level democracy, the question is that do young people feel something about the Europe? Because then you are much more tend to act if you feel something. If you really love the animals, you do want to protect it. If you really feel a bit scary or worried about the climate change, then you want to act. If you are worried of your neighboring water system polluting, then you really want to act. If you have something like feeling that I feel better when I know that the children of Africa have a hope, also have a right to believe in the future. And it was very nice put here that the right to be hopeful. And I want to always be the politician who has the right to be hopeful. And then I'm going to do with the young people also. So yes, there are these consultations, but also the role of NGOs is always important. Because it's this possibility of the participative democracy, which will be there, maybe some forms of voting or clicking, click democracy, you can show your opinion. But I still am that old now, 45 already, that I think I can say that also I believe in this representative democracy, especially on the times that strong populism is taking place, that it's not always that easy to say that this is right and this is wrong. It needs a lot of work, or I don't know why else I have like 50, 60 hours of my working weeks. If I always know by raising hand or down, I always got an opinion how to solve this. No, it's a work. To be a politician is hard work. And then we come together to the table, and then we prepare ourselves with the stakeholders where the young people are part of it. So then I also think that it is important, this old-fashioned way to make people interesting, that who are they choosing in the elections, and this participative democracy cannot replace, but can improve the system nowadays we do have. And from this part, I really want to say that I like that youth is not taking the youth ball or talking about the youth issues only. If you don't remember the European history, it is the history of wars, and if the people don't feel it, that this is actually the peace project. And there's a reason behind this, all the bureaucracy and funny EU things that we are trying to work together. Young people should feel something, and maybe they feel roaming, maybe they feel opportunity to meet with other people, and then want to get engaged on this system. And maybe also think about it. Is it self-evidence that there's peace forever? Because if there's not, then I think the young people are the ones who are marching first if we have a war. So it's also the security, defense. It's all very much about the young people. It's not the old people who decide that they will go to the war front line. As simple as that. Talk about everything. Take the whole picture of the politics.
We have a reaction from Kristen.
I just wanted to talk about the feeling European and that feeling and how do you grow that. I think the maybe most successful way we have done that has been the Erasmus Plus program, which now celebrated its 30 years. And I really wanted the chance to say that while the commissioner earlier mentioned that the Erasmus budget should be doubled, just less than 2 weeks ago, the youth organizations of Europe call for Erasmus budget to be multiplied by 10. We're far more ambitious, and we hope everybody will support and get behind us. When something is successful, then you need to put money towards that. Growing this European feeling, this unity, Erasmus has been extremely successful in that. So I really hope that you all will also sign your name to Erasmus times 10 and support this great project.
And I also support the enlargement, because in the parliament we always have a kind of bilateral friendship work that we do. So I'm the one from the Moldova. And then I noticed they cannot, even they have like a start cooperation, EU gives money for the startups and then society to structure it, they cannot participate in Erasmus.
Erasmus definitely needs to be also available for neighboring countries, most certainly. And I just remembered I wanted to say that the Cult Committee of the European Parliament also supports Erasmus times 10, which is excellent news just from a few days ago. So,
do we have any reactions? Tuomas wants to speak.
And our Prime Minister last week mentioned that he supports that the Erasmus Plus would be better funded. He didn't say times 10, but he said times something, and also would be expanded to also neighboring countries, but also to Africa, in the sense that we could offer better integration of our youth and better integration of the educational facilities on African and European continent in the future as well. But about youth participation, I'd still like to point out the thing that Miapetra actually said, that young people should not only participate and state their opinions in regarding things that are related to your youth only, but also to other matters. Actually, that is the most important point. When someone asks your opinion in youth matters, it's very important, but you should also always demand for an opinion also in other demands than youth demands as well, because otherwise we will always be stuck only in the youth block, only speaking about what the youth actually, about the youth policy issues, which are important. I don't want to undermine that, but we need to break out from that bubble.
Yes, about the Erasmus program, in the parliament we have been supporting the idea for doubling it, but of course if we can find money, I think many of us, we are willing also to make it 10 times bigger. Erasmus is already, as you know, it's covering Africa and big parts of the world, but of course it's much more limited programs what are going on there. So now the idea is, for example, in Africa, that we are focusing more, for example, to vocational education and opening more possibilities, for example, in that field and so on. And I think it's very, very important. I would like to see that, for example, in the future in Finland, I would like to see that all the Finnish students they should go to work or to study abroad. Now about 20% is already going, and we are the top country in European Union, but I would like to see everyone to go, and we have to give possibilities and encourage everyone to do that. And then about the youth participation, I think also that it's very important that we have, when we are making decisions, it's important to have people who have a little bit different experiences, who are coming a little bit from different fields. And often people, when they speak about experience, they think that it has to be a very long one. But I think that the young people, they have totally different view of the world, because they have been born into different world and they have different experience than us who are 45. Are you also 45 like I am? Are we in the same age? Yeah. So no, you are younger.
No, I'm 45.
Oh, you're 45. Oh, sorry. Okay. we used to be young. Yes. So I think it's very important to have people who are coming from different ages and who have different experiences. And I think your views, they are very much needed when we are making decisions for future, because it's your future. And I want to encourage everyone to be active, of course, in your organization and in civil society, but also participate to politics and candidate in elections. And I know that my party, Kokoomus, is trying to do that. We are trying to encourage always the young people to take a part to politics, and when they are becoming members in parliament, we are putting them to ministers, like now also, because my party is in government in Finland, and most of our ministers, they are very young, much, much younger than me.
I think we can take one more question from the audience, if we have any. Yes, back there.
Well, this was originally to Mr. Katainen, but he mentioned stronger muscles for the European Union in terms of foreign policy. First off, is this something you're in favor of or not? And the second thing is, do you think this should fall under the competencies of the European Council, the Commission, or the Parliament? The reason why I ask this is because we already have the battle groups, which have never seen action due to the fact that they are under the Council, which can basically never agree on anything.
Yeah, quick response to this. I'll use the both like this. As I said before, I think we should move further with the unified foreign policy in the Union, and especially now with the many decisions are made with a unanimous vote. Everyone has to agree in the Council, so we should move further with the majority votes. So it should be enough for the majority of the countries to agree on certain matters.
I'm not expecting very big steps on this field, because it's so important for all the member states, I think, keep up their own power. It's something what is so, it's core of the independence that you have your own foreign policy. So I think we have been moving forward all the time, but quite slowly. And I think first time when we could be very united was when the European Union was deciding about the sanctions against Russia. And I think it was also a little bit surprising for Russia that we could make the decision about three and a half years ago. But I'm not expecting that we are taking very, very big steps forward. But of course now, for example, when we are deepening the common defense policy. It's also one step, a little bit in same area. So I think we will go forward, but not very fast.
From our perspective, I would say we strongly support more Europe and a stronger Europe. So for us, I think it's going in the direction that we would like to see. But it is not an area where I do think youth opinion there is extremely important, but we don't have a very defined position. So I'm not going to maybe elaborate more, but I think in general, yes, it's the direction that we are also in favor of.
Yeah, the question was very good and precise, that who should have the power to decide and say. I think there should be now, when we renew the system, that's something that what is clearly a common policy, so then it makes that it's a common decision making and 1, 2, 3 countries cannot block it. So to have the normal legislative process, and I think this is what we should now target, that once there is a common ground for the policy, there is a common budget for the more defense, European defense, which I am doubting in some part, because there is a lot of good R&D needs, medical needs, how to prevent AIDS or HIV or cancer or many important issues that we need a lot of research, and then it cannot be easy that defense industry will get it more easily and then take it from this Horizon 2020 that we have and cherish. So then the next phase that let's put 40% for the defense, that's so important. No, not that easily. But then I think that it will bring together what we have already, what is European. If it's the European battle groups, then it should be the European level decisions, and then member states can take part or not, but not to block it and not to do it. So there is a good room to improve the decision-making system, and now it's time to take something that is, and it will be always Finnish parliament to decide whether they will send Finnish people there, but then it can be to join the group or not to join the group, and Europe will then succeed with quicker. But as Henna also said, I have the very same idea that this will be the step forward, so there will be not European army in the next decade. It will be a lot European knowledge, and hopefully also some domestic European more activity, and then, as I mentioned many times, the cyber threats that we can work more together inside Europe.
I think I sounded too, negative on that. It sounded maybe that I don't think that it's important. I think it's very important, because when we are united in Europe, we are very strong and we can really lead the global processes. So I see it's very important, but then I think that it's not realistic to wait very fast step on this field.
Thomas.
Yes, I think, as you said, it's true that the foreign policy is one of the core fundamentals of an independent nation, which is why it's very hard for nation states to actually have more foreign policy decisions in the common tables. But for Finland, I think it has been a success. 50 years ago, or before the Second World War, I think Finland had zero say in matters of the world, zero say in what happens in Europe. Now we are there in the same tables where the other countries are, who are also making decisions, and we actually can have a say if we are active, and if we actually take part in all of the pre-work done before the decisions. So it's more than just the vote.
So to sum up all these interesting discussions and the debate on the future of Europe, which is not an easy task, I believe, I would like to hear from all of you one word that describes your feeling about the future of Europe. So one word that describes how you feel about the future of Europe. We can start here. Sure.
Hope.
I was also going to say hope, but another word maybe is confused.
I'm positive.
I would say unity.
With these words, I would like to thank the panel for an excellent discussion. Applause. I hope you all got something to bring back home. At least I got many new thoughts. Tomorrow is the Independence Day of Finland, so congratulations and happy birthday to Finland already in advance. If you hear anything about llamas or alpacas, there's a thing going on. We will have coffee served that direction. You will find the way. And with that, I would like to thank you, everyone, and wish you a happy picture. There's a picture I'm hearing. Yes, you can take a selfie with that. There's also a Polaroid camera somewhere around, I'm hearing. Over there, back there, yes. So you can bring souvenirs with you with a great picture taken here. So, thank you very much and have a nice evening.